Cody, you just shot a documentary on why people choose to have kids.
Yes.
So how do you feel about having kids?
I think the thought of having kids has been something that I've been thinking about ever since I was a kid. It seems like everybody around me had kids and would end up having kids. But it also seems like now that I'm an adult, there's a lot of people that choose not to have kids.
And the crazy part about deciding to have them is that it's this time-sensitive, yet impossibly large decision to make without ever having had a child before.
It was great. I'm a kid.
If I want to understand the reasoning behind the choice to have kids before we make the decision ourselves, then I need to actually sit down and talk to the people that have had children, people that currently have newborns, people that are actively trying to have kids, and other people that have experienced both the beauty and hardship of being a parent.
But I think the biggest and first question that I have surrounding all of this is, why do people choose to have kids in the first place? And so that's kind of where I want to start.
When we first started dating, I think even at the age that we talked about our future immensely. Do you want dogs? Do you want kids? Do you want a house? What are your life goals? Like, even at that age, that was something that we were thinking about. We both come from broken families in their own sense. So I think with as young as we were, we always bonded on this idea of creating a family unit that is something that we could hold and protect as our own, that maybe looked different from the way that we were raised. So for us, having kids was never a question. I love so fully, and I knew that I need an expression of that love. I want to love and create a family dynamic where I can be a wife that I'm proud of, where I can be a mother that I'm proud of. Motherhood was something that I never ever thought about not doing. I just wanted to be intentional about the timing and giving ourselves like plenty of time to live the life that we wanted to live before we were ready to step into that role.
So I've never been one of those women that ever since I was little dreamed of being a mother. That's all I ever wanted to do. I wanted to stay home and just take care of my babies. Like, that's not my personality. For me, as I've gotten older, I've had a lot of great experiences. We have been able to travel a whole lot and do all kinds of things. But I have started to realize just day-to-day life, surviving, making money, planning your next trip, and starting a new business venture, all of that, you start to realize like this just isn't enough.
There was a while where I didn't want kids because I think I was just enjoying life. It wasn't just like one day I was like, you know what? Yeah, we got to do this. It was going home for Christmas and like interacting with my siblings and being like, wow, like this is really fun. Creating just like a tribe or like a unit that are just always your family, and that unconditional love that we get to display for them is something that I think I just realized that I really wanted.
We both had our lives before meeting each other, and so
Yeah.
and I've always wanted to have a family, but I think I had to go through some things in my life to get to a point where I would be a good dad. There's plenty of bad dads out there, so I didn't want to be one of them. So I wanted to be a dad that had with kids that loved me as much as I love my dad. And he died when I was 30.
I grew up, my dad was not really there. He fell into drugs. I don't blame him for it. I mean, he came from a different place. He came from a different country. You know, I think a lot of people can get scared. I think that can deter them from wanting kids because maybe they feel like they'll fall into that same type of trap. But I think the biggest reason why I wanted to have kids was really to give them the life that I think I always wanted. And I feel like that's an answer that a lot of people might give that kind of grow up in a similar type situation. But I'm so excited to show our kids the world and the possibilities of what they can accomplish, and stay true to that, and be kind of the rock for them. So long story short, I just want to be the dad that I never had, really. And that's something that I always desired.
I mean, I was a child of divorced parents. The family broke up. Not only was the end of a marriage, but also the end of a family. There was a lot of just pain, emotional pain associated with that. So I would say somewhat hesitant. The responsibility of, okay, I'm now a husband and we're, providers, and we are, we've got these certain roles assigned to us. It wasn't something that I was like, it's my destiny, I must. But more and more, I focus in on the word legacy, and ultimately legacy is about, it's not about the things we build or do or anything else. It's about what's our living legacy. And for us, it's our sons. I mean, they are truly our living legacy. And when we're dead and gone, probably sooner than later, I'm guessing. But when we're dead and gone, our sons live on.
I think a big concern of mine is losing myself and my path if I choose to have kids.
I think it's going to adjust. I don't necessarily believe that you will lose a part of yourself. You can, unless your children all of a sudden become your full identity, then yes.
And that right there is exactly what I'm scared of. Of course, my wife and I could talk about this until we're blue in the face, but I wanted to get the opinion of someone that really knows what they're talking about. So I got in touch with Dr. Courtney Lynn, a child psychologist here in Denver whose work is primarily focused on parents, children, and families.
I think there's so many fears in parenting in general because it's unknown. You don't know what to expect, right? It's like quitting a job. There would be so many fears with that. The fear of losing yourself is just part of the fear of the unknown and not knowing what it's going to be like, not knowing how you're going to feel after, you have a baby or bring a baby into your family.
Both of us had lived in all kinds of different countries. We had traveled all kinds of different places. We both love to travel. I mean, it is new cultures, new food, new experiences, just drinking in the world. And I was thinking, oh, baby, how's this gonna work? Because, babies have stuff, right? You're gonna cart around stuff.
Part of me was a little bit worried, I think. I always try to be my fullest self first, so then I can show up to our marriage and be the best husband for her. And, in my opinion, I think any healthy relationship is your needs have to be taken care of first, to an extent, to ensure that you can show up for your people you love and your family. And I was a little bit worried about that because the things I love are typically like golf or, it's really just golf and golf. I'll be honest about that. And so
I always would go all in everything I did, whether it's surfing, scuba diving,
Skiing.
golf. I mean, I'd buy the gear, I'd do the thing, right? And so what I tell people who are getting married and have kids, you need to really look at your life and say, what do I like to do? What do I love to do? The stuff you like to do, you may want to put in a box and put it in the closet for a little bit. But the stuff you love to do, you find a way to integrate that into your life. And the stuff you love to do, probably is not that much.
I think there's been a freedom that I've found of being someone who has been so tied to an identity my whole life, whether it was through sports, whether it was through any accolades in school, whether it was through my career. I was always chasing something and proving to the world that I am something. The idea of stepping into motherhood for me felt like this release of all of that, this freedom. I was ready to not think about myself all the time, to not have my entire brain so hyper-focused on what I'm doing, what my legacy is going to be, what I'm going to leave behind in the world, and instead say, let's pause that for a second, get outside of your own head, stop crafting up this life for the sake of just trying to prove something, and let's just lean into being a mother and what that means, and just surrender to this idea of being and living and having that be enough.
Am I going to lose myself? Am I not going to know who I am anymore after I have a kid? And you will be different, right? I think that's part of it too. It's not necessarily that you're going to lose yourself, but you are going to change, as a result of bringing a kid into your family.
We're on this journey of figuring out if having kids is going to be a part of our story. But I will admit that regardless of that, there is something that I've always looked forward to, and it's finding out that my wife is pregnant. I've always thought that that would be like the coolest moment. What it feels like to know there's this human in the world that exists, and in one split second in my mind, that person becomes a reality. The thought of that has been something that has always gotten me really excited. As you know, I keep pressuring you to make sure that you film it. Like, oh, okay, if you're gonna do it, set up a camera and make sure you capture this moment.
You know, when you start to try to get pregnant, you don't realize how emotionally taxing that is. When you're continuing to test and waiting for that positive response, like it gets tough.
We had been married about 4 years. You know, we just thought it would happen organically, and it didn't. We really had a lot of trouble getting pregnant. Took us about 4 years, and we actually went to a reproductive endocrinologist, and that's when we were able to have our first child. It was after 8 years of marriage.
It felt like, okay, is this real? Because it had been so long, after 8 years, the reality of it sinks in very quickly. And, you know, she's got, you had the stick to show me, and it was all so exciting.
I was just kind of bored midday at home on a Saturday, and I proceed to take a pregnancy test, and I see that positive. It was just me and this secret that I had. I was the only person in the world that knew about him for 45 minutes, and I'm just sitting in my bedroom crying, looking out the window, and I am just dreaming of everything that he is, but there's this fear of, is this baby going to make it full term? Like, you're just so hesitant of all you want is just to immediately protect.
So when I was 17, I found out that I had cervical cancer, which was super unheard of in a 17-year-old. I ended up having to have a hysterectomy. I was luckily able to keep my ovaries, you know, to maintain chances of having biological children. Fast forward to 2015, me and Rob meet and have that first conversation of, hey, I can't carry your kids. So our journey might look a little bit different than most people's.
We got married in 2018. It was about a year and a half after we had gotten married that we decided that we wanted to pursue the surrogacy journey.
You know, they tell you the average wait time to match with a surrogate is 12 to 15 months. So we're thinking we've got plenty of time. This is not going to happen quickly. And then in April, we get an email and they're like, hey, we have a potential match for you. Pregnancy and like conceiving in general, it has to be the perfect storm. I think we sometimes think it just happens. Things really do have to be perfect. Finally, our surrogate's body is looking good. And they're like, yeah, we can do an embryo transfer. It was such a cool process.
Yeah, the way that we were just meshing with the other couple, it was really a special time. We're waiting to make sure that it's working, and it does end up working.
You see, you know, videos of people like they take a pregnancy test and it's positive, and you see the reaction, you're like, oh, that's so sweet. But you don't like get that feeling until you're actually like in it, and then that happens and you're like, holy crap, like there is a child made from our DNA that exists and is growing right now. I've never loved anything more. So that was like one of the best moments ever. I mean, just finding out.
You know, something I didn't realize until the last year and a half is just how common hardship and pain and miscarriage is in regards to pregnancy. I always thought it was just a woman gets pregnant and 9 months later a baby comes, and yeah, sometimes things happen and there's accidents, but it's introducing a lot of potential pain into your life. It's a risk getting pregnant. It's a risk choosing to want to have a kid.
So we were pregnant, and then it was, I think, maybe about 10 weeks, and I could tell that things weren't right. And so I went in and they did the ultrasound, and they're like, yeah, there's no heartbeat. And so that was pretty devastating. And then about maybe a year later, I was just in a ton of pain, and it got really bad. And so he came and got me, and we went into the doctor, and they're like, you're pregnant. I'm like, what? And the doctor came in and he's like, so you're pregnant? And with all that pain, it means it's in the tube. And I'm like, well, what do you do? And he's like, we do surgery. And I'm like, when? He's like, as fast as I can get you there. Little did I know, it's like the #1 cause of death in women childbearing age. Because if it bursts, it floods your system and you die. For us, both of those were so early on, and one I didn't even know. You start to get excited, but like I said, I can't imagine when it's further down the road, when you've sat with it longer and that expectation has built and grown.
About at 10 weeks, I ended up going to the hospital for significant bleeding and was diagnosed with a subchorionic hematoma. And then from pretty much from 10 weeks up until she was born, I just had complication after complication. Multiple ER visits, multiple trips to the doctor. And then when I was 20 weeks pregnant, I was getting ready for our anniversary. And while I was getting ready for our date, my water broke. That just began like just the worst string of events. So at 20 weeks, babies are not viable, which means that they can't be saved. And so we went to the ER again, but unfortunately we made it 24 hours before I went into labor. And then a few hours later, she was born. She was born at 10 ounces and I think 5 inches long. So very tiny. We were able to spend about an hour or so holding her, telling her goodbye, before the doctors took her away. Then we kind of had to deal with the grief and the loss and what it means to watch your child die when the opposite's supposed to happen. Your children are supposed to be there when you die. You shouldn't watch your children die.
When you're a child's that new, they give you an option for cremation, and then they take the ashes and spread them in Rocky Mountain National Park. And I think that's just really important part of the story, because people that hear our story when they go to Rocky Mountain might think about us and think about Haven.
So we're getting these weekly ultrasounds. We finally get to what will be our last ultrasound, I think, before we're released from the fertility clinic and we'll be released to a regular OBGYN. You know, me and Rob both are just feeling so good because statistically they say when you get past the 8-week mark, your chances of miscarriage go down significantly.
Each week I had been really nervous on Wednesdays, and when we would get the call, it was just such a relief to see the heartbeat. And this particular week, it wasn't even on my mind. I was just so confident because the weeks prior had been so good. And then I get the call and I looked, that's when we got the news from the ultrasound tech that there was no heartbeat.
That moment is burned into my memory because it feels like it shouldn't be your reality. Like it kind of felt like I was like watching myself experience that.
Really just kind of jarring to us because it all lined up so perfectly. We just started to ask why. After that, it seemed like it was just a devastating, traumatic thing that how are we going to get over this?
Yeah.
So there's something called post-traumatic growth. And so what can happen, right, after realizing how fragile and precious life is, sometimes people can become even more resilient, right? And they go through something that's really difficult and realize, wow, I have so much love to give. Of course, I want to have another child and give even more love, to another child. And of course, it's really variable, for each family because a lot of situations are very traumatic. But, sometimes people realize like I said, how fragile life is and want to, live life even fuller.
I feel like there's a newfound confidence just as a person. You go through hard things and you come out on the other side and you just are a more confident human. You're more confident in what you want in life and you're strong because you've walked through this so you can walk through something else. it's shed light on what really isn't that important to me anymore. My life was my work, what I felt like people perceived me as. Going through this process, I feel like it's like shed me of things that just don't matter and were taking so much space in my brain. It's not that having children is the only thing and the only path and like none of those other things that I'm talking about matter anymore. It's just that they didn't need to matter as much as they did back then. And this has like helped me let go of those things.
I heard someone once say that grief and love are proportional. So, as much as you love someone, that is, a similar amount of grief that you go through when you lose them. And so I think that, all of the pain and the grief that parents can feel is also all of the love and joy and fulfillment that they can feel too.
I was really depressed the past year after Haven died. I had a hard time seeing purpose in anything. And then once I got pregnant again, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't hike. I couldn't climb, ski. When I had May, it wasn't about, oh, now I can do all these things that I couldn't do before. It just changed my perspective. There's so much joy. I mean, even like we went to a coffee shop and it was her first coffee shop. And we were like, oh my gosh, it's her first coffee shop. Or going anywhere. We went on our first hike the other day with her. And it's so much more exciting to be like, wow, we still get to hike, but now we get to bring her along. And like right now she's a potato and we have to carry her, but someday she's gonna walk with us and like explore. That's just really exciting to like watch her already in 6 weeks grow and explore and just see the world completely differently.
When NASA releases new images just taken of the planets and the cosmos, and you look at it and you're just like, this is insane that is out there. Like, how do we just go about a life where there's this infinite universe and then we just see images like this and it's so beautiful and captivating? And then you meet your child for the first time and you look in their eyes and it's literally like you're looking into the cosmos. This connectedness and this unbelievable like explosion in your heart of love, and you're looking at your child and you're like, I literally made you. That's how that love feels when you're just looking into your child's eyes for the first time. And I think you get a glimpse of that when you meet your person and your partner, of that eye contact and that connectedness with the person that you love. And then you're looking into the eyes of your child. It's an explosion of that.
Oh, magic. It was so magical.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, I just kept looking, couldn't stop looking at him and taking pictures of him, and just this is our son. The other thing was my admiration and the new insight I had to my wife, having watched her give birth. It was just overwhelming. I mean, what she endured, how she persevered. It was incredible, absolutely incredible to watch. And I knew that I never could have done it.
You're starting a whole new chapter of your life. So even if you continue to work toward all of your dreams and goals and you're super successful in that way, you're still now a parent, which is different than what you were before, right? Before, it really was just your dreams and goals and you didn't have the parenting piece of it. So I think there's always a grieving process in a way. Of course, it's super joyful, and a lot of parents feel even more fulfilled than they ever did before, but that's not necessarily always the case. And so I think navigating that process and being true to yourself can be really important.
And we just made a decision. We're just going.
We're dragging them with us.
We're dragging these kids with us wherever we go, and they're going to learn to adjust. Brandon had traveled to
22 states and 2 countries by the time he was 22 months.
We just took them everywhere. And the boys, they learned to love travel, and it's now in their DNA. So that's one I was definitely concerned about, losing that freedom.
Who do you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, when you're the stay-at-home parent 24/7, that really does come. I mean, there's a moment when you're like, all I am is a cleaner, a discipliner. You're just like I have nothing left of myself. As a mom, as a stay-at-home mom, there were definitely times where I thought, man, this is a lot. You know, I can't leave if I don't get coverage. If you want to really pour yourself in there, there's going to be things you're going to have to give up.
You have the child, and then that almost rewires your brain to just completely restructure your priorities in everything that you do, everything you say, the people you hang out with.
I think having a child does mean you will have to give things up. For me, that looked like giving up a business. I'm not sure yet if I'm going to go back to work. I felt like right before getting pregnant with Haven, I started to really get in a groove of what I wanted my career to look like.
I think there's a lot that happens with letting go of a career I worked so hard to build, or just bookmark it and be okay with that. And now when someone's asking what I do for a living, it feels a lot different. I don't have that. Here's my next exciting thing. Here's what I'm working on. Here's my 5-year plan. It's I am at home with my baby and I can't express how special that is. But I realize that it's all seasonal too. I look at it as such a long-term thing that letting go of an identity or it being changed forever, that's just right now. It's just this season right now. It's not like I gave up everything and now I'm just a mom and that sucks. Like I don't feel like that at all. I feel the furthest from that.
If there are parts of parenting that you're like, oh, I didn't know this was going to be part of it, and I'm not super excited about this part, then I feel like acknowledging that is really helpful. Because if we start to beat ourselves up like, oh no, I was supposed to love everything about parenting, and I'm disappointed that I can't, I don't know, snowboard on the weekends anymore because, you know, my kid is younger. I think acknowledging and validating those feelings for yourself is really important.
I was sitting there yesterday and I was thinking to myself, I don't really care about myself right now. Like I really don't, because what's making me happy is caring for my son and thinking about his dreams and his future and how I can be there. You know, my wants and my desires are now kind of gone. And that's, I think, emotionally tough. I need to do a better job, I think, of finding a happier balance. But that's what's hard, is just navigating your emotions.
So many new parents can completely enter this down spiral of their life feeling so different and being terrified by that of, this is my new normal forever. What have I done? I am mourning my life before all of this, when in reality, I'm like, this is testing our spirits and our soul and our relationship in a new way that you can view as a fun new challenge. You can view it as a way to look outside of yourself. You can view it to push yourself to new limits that you've never had to be pushed before.
You have all these life experiences and you take all these trips and you push your body to the extent of whatever hard is to you, right? And if you haven't done that, and if you haven't pushed yourself, and if you haven't traveled, and if you haven't accomplished at least half of what you want to in life, then you probably shouldn't have a kid yet, right?
Well, and I don't see it as this before and after too, of like doing everything that you want to do before you have kids. There's something that's really powerful in your kids seeing you do all those things and live your life in the way that you want to live your life. My mom was watching TV one weekend and there was jet ski racing on, and she looks and she's like, I want to do that. She looks to my dad, I want to do that. He's like, let's do that. Let's make it happen. Before I knew it, I'm with my parents on the weekend. We're at the lake. I'm seeing them race. I'm seeing my mom qualify, win these races. She's beating out all the women. She starts competing in the men's races in jet ski racing. She goes to the world finals for jet ski racing. They brought me along for the ride, and they say, hey, here's a snow cone. Go sit on the beach. We're going to go race.
Honestly, I think the right reason for having a kid is being true to yourself. I think it is a really big decision. When there's internal clocks, I think that can put a lot of stress on people. And so I think the more we can kind of be patient and open to seeing how life unfolds, I think, you know, the better it can be.
Quite frankly, for us, our first few years of marriage was very rocky. The timing of having kids early on would have not been a good idea for us.
There's no sort of formula, or there's no like, let's make sure we've got this much in the bank. Check. We have a house. Check. Our careers are at this point. Check. For us, it was, we needed us to be strong.
Yes.
And we were not strong because we knew that our lives were going to change. I don't think we knew how much, but if we weren't strong and really excited about it, it would not have gone well.
I think one expectation that people have that's just not true is that you have to have all your ducks in a row. What that implies is that you will at some point in your life have your ducks all in a row, and that's just not impossible. Your life is just a series of ups and downs and certainty and uncertainty and great news and then terrible news. Be sure that your heart is ready. All those other things that you may be considering you have to get done before kids come along, well, you know what? There's a really long time when you're an empty nester and you can just go back and do that again if you want.
It is something that I do think you need to feel called to. I think it needs to be something that you're committed to, and I feel like I'm on this earth and this is something that I'm supposed to do here.
From my brother's perspective, there was a lot of pressure on them. And, why didn't you have kids? And honestly, for them, it just was not the right decision. And I'm proud of them that they didn't have kids and then regret it, right? Because then you're parenting from a place of resentment.
When you think about the sacrifice it's going to take to step into this role, something that really helped me is when I'm looking at my baby, am I going to blame him for stripping me of my identity? Am I going to feel any sort of resentment? If there's any inkling of resentment about the idea of a baby coming into your life that's going to take you away from these things that you still want to do, then I would say that waiting probably wouldn't hurt. I wanted to make sure that I was ready in a place to let go of certain things and look at him with a full heart and wholeness, as opposed to I'm angry that I have to make all these sacrifices and be here for you right now. That a baby doesn't deserve that.
If you're ready to love something else more than you love yourself and give everything to your kids, the truth is it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. The late nights won't matter. You don't know the doors and opportunities that it's going to open, whether it's unlocking your new self or unlocking a new dream that you might have when you have kids. And the timing doesn't matter as long as you're just ready to love them. If you're not 110% in, then you should not have kids. You should not, because the hard times, I know that's funny, the hard times are gonna seem like hell. But for us, the hard times are learning lessons that we can grow from, and that's how we view it.
Yeah, anyone who decides not to have kids, fully support that. That's a hard decision to come down to also. Where I do feel my heart tug is people who are undecided, who have an inkling, who have a strong desire, and they're just not sure yet. It does unlock a portal in you that I would mourn for anyone that they never accessed if they decided not to and later regretted it.
I think if you live your life in fear, then your life is going to cap at a certain point and you will max out on the level of joy you can experience. I think because we lost Haven, the amount of joy I've experienced with May has been significantly more because I know what it's like to lose a child. And so I don't take Maylin for granted. I love, even at 3 a.m. when I'm exhausted, I almost every day have a moment where I want her to sleep, but I'm also sad when I have to put her down in the crib because I just love holding her and I just love being with her. And I don't know if that would have happened if Haven would have lived. Not wishing, again, that we had the story we had, but our joy is just so much more because of our story.
Yeah, I think all the doubts that I've ever had in my life, or all the failures, or whatever it might be, when I look into his eyes, I feel whole, and I feel like I'm worth everything in this world when I look in his eyes. My heart is so full when I look into these two eyes that I always feel like it's gonna explode, and I always feel like there's no more room in there. But man, they expand the walls.
With as crazy as he is and as spitty as he can be and all of these milestones and things that we're learning being first-time parents, I have never felt so content and just happy. It's the highest honor of a role I could ever carry. It's the most proud thing I could have ever done. It's my favorite thing I've ever done.
So how do you feel about having kids?
It just seems like there is an overwhelming amount of information. When I asked them if they regretted it, when I asked them what the hardest parts were, what the most beautiful parts were, nobody seems to regret having kids. And so I think it's a miracle of an opportunity to be able to pass love and life on to somebody else and to get to grow our family. Life is the most beautiful gift. The idea that we get to exist and we get to be in this world and do beautiful things and create and impact and love. And the fact that we have the power to give that opportunity to somebody and then to love them gets me really excited. To show somebody that is my son or a daughter, hey, life is gonna get really hard sometimes and it's gonna suck, but you can choose to make the most of this messy thing that we call life. It's not gonna be easy, it's not gonna be perfect, but something that I do love in life is adventure. And it seems like a brand new adventure that is really scary and a really big decision, but it's an adventure that I believe that I choose to embark on. Wanna go practice?